welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today, our program bringing you all the latest news and events happening inside the Black Continent. My name is Angie Meher and I'll be joining you for today's episode. And of course, as usual, we start with a look at some of the news making the headlines. And the African Union Center for Post-War Reconstruction and Development was launched in Cairo on Tuesday. The launch was attended by the AU Commissioner for Political Affairs and Peace and Security. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Ambassador. Ambassador, can you hear us, sir? Mr. Ambassador, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi. Yes. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
I hear you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Ambassador, today, of course, the African Union Center for Post-War Reconstruction and Development was launched in Cairo. How do you weigh the significance of this launching, Mr. Ambassador?
It's one very important step towards more and more African cooperation from the point of view of Egypt.
Yes.
Of course, Egypt, one of the oldest countries in the continent, and we are trying to help ourselves and to help our partners in Africa, of course.
Yes,
and we have a very good history since the discoveries of the continent in the Pharaonic time, since Muhammad Ali and the discoveries of the Upper River Nile stages. And of course, during the independent movement with Gamal Abdel Nasser and all the leaders of Africa, they look to us as a very dear friend and partner in the liberation process. Now we are keen to help more and more Africa, and during the presidency of Egypt and our President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in 2019, we promote the trade also and the free trade area from just 21 countries in the COMESA. Now we are establishing a huge free trade area which will combine all the 51 countries of Africa with inhabitants of 1,200 million inhabitants. This is the largest number of inhabitants in any free trade area in the world. So we are going on, and now we are establishing this new institution, and this is very good. And of course, whenever you are seeking to have a premises for any new organization in Africa, most of Africans look to Egypt, because I am saying this really trying to say that as a diplomat, we are the most acceptable face in Africa.
Yes, absolutely.
Because after all, we are a very old civilization. We have, of course, a black civilization. Tutankhamun was a black king of Egypt, because we are white, and they are glad that there are white Africans, because we are all Muslims, and the Al-Azhar is there all over the continent, because we have the presidency of the Eastern Church. Our church also is in good relations with the Eastern Church in the whole African continent. Many reasons which connect Egypt with Africa. So I am so glad with this new development, and I think we are up to it, and we shall get more and more good relations with the African continent.
Absolutely. Mr. Ambassador, of course, lots of priorities will top their agenda, but let's talk a bit about how, in your opinion, the wars and strifes have impacted the development of African nations and the African continent as a whole.
We are working on many fronts. Of course, we are trying to enlarge our market up till the one free trade area, which will combine all the African 51 countries.
Yes.
Second, that Egypt is promoting the idea of asking the wealthy countries to come and to invest in Africa, because Africa is really is a poor continent, while the money flow going from Africa to the developed countries is much more than the money it receives, because African countries are paying their debt requirements, they are paying their invoices of imports. more than we get as investment or more than we get as the price of our exports. We want to change this. Thank God that, and thanks to the Egyptian efforts, that Europe agreed, China, Japan, they all agreed to come to invest in Africa with the help of the Egyptian experience, which is very well developed and accepted. So we can here give a priority for investment. Africa needs more and more investment.
Yes, absolutely.
Which sectors, as Egyptian, I will go immediately to agriculture. Because as you well know, Egypt and the Arab world, we are importing more than 50% of our food needs. So, and I personally, I see that many opportunities in Africa are there. As ambassador in Cameroon, I am so glad that I hear, or I read in the news a couple of days ago, that our Minister of Industry is going to finance a project where we shall invest on the wood industry in Cameroon, because Cameroon, they have the fourth largest forest in Africa, so we can get immediately wood and timber from Cameroon with prices you cannot imagine, very reasonable prices.
Yes.
And to use it in Egypt instead of buying the same Cameroonian wood, we buy it from Italy or from France.
Yes.
Now we are establishing a direct connection.
Route. Yes,
so
absolutely.
we are also talking about the priority of the energy, and especially the electrical energy. We are going to connect the electric net with Congo, with Sudan, with I hope Ethiopia, and with Tanzania also. So Egypt now is in a position to export its electricity to Europe. Many fields are there, but I must be honest to you also, to our audience, to say that we have a homework to be done. Still our bureaucracy is killing many opportunities for investment. Still we have to ameliorate our banking system. It's not up to the international level. Many things must be done. Transport in Africa is not that good. We want Egypt Air to go to every single capital in Africa.
Yes.
We want the road from Alexandria to Johannesburg to be realized immediately. The priorities are there, and I think everybody who is working on the African side knows whatever we are talking about.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Ambassador. One final question, if I may, Mr. Ambassador. The road to industrialization, a very important thing to happen for African nations, especially since it is part of the development path and economic integration between African nations.
Yes, this is a very important question because I think if we look quite well, the knowledge is very important to deepen in our relations with Africa. If you know that many African countries do not know to plant good oranges, for instance, and I have this experience, or that Egypt needs to plant wheat in Africa. So the coordination here is going to complement what Egypt have with other African and Arab countries. Mind you that half of the Arab world is in Africa also. So many chances in order to make our economies complement to each other, and the sky is the limit. But it needs a political support.
Yes.
It needs that the leadership take it into consideration, and I am so happy that we gain now our president who is keen to go to Africa whenever it needs, and he was presiding the African Union in 2019. So I think we are on the right track, but we have to double our efforts.
Absolutely. Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much, sir, for your time and your insight on today's edition of Africa Today. And we still continue with more news making the headlines. Cairo and Tripoli launched an electronic system to facilitate labor mobility between the two sides. No Egyptian worker will be allowed entry into Libya except through this electronic system. We have more details in this report.
The Ministry of Manpower in Egypt and Libya launched on Monday an electronic system to organize and facilitate the movement of labor between the two sides. Mohammed Safan stressed during a press conference with Libya's Minister of Labor and Rehabilitation, Ali Al-Abid, that no Egyptian worker will be allowed entry into Libya except through this electronic system. He added that the joint Libyan-Egyptian Technical Committee responsible for coordinating the return of Egyptian workers to Libya held several sessions in Tripoli and Cairo in this regard. For his part, Ali Al-Abid stressed that the Egyptian labor will participate in the reconstruction of the Libyan state, noting that within this framework, the Libyan government launched the WAFD recruitment platform to control the Libyan labor market, preserve the rights of workers, and identify the professions needed in the Libyan market.
And still continuing with our news, the African Union, the African emissions do not exceed 4% of the total global emissions, yet the continent will be among the most affected. This statement was made by the Egyptian Ministry of Environment, of course, in light of all the changes and the climate changes that are being witnessed all around the world. We have more details in the story.
The Ministry of Environment stressed the importance of establishing the African Resilience and Adaptation Center in Cairo to adapt to climate change in this regard, which comes to serve African countries. Yasmin Fuad further explained that it is not an advisory board but seeks to obtain the necessary funding to adapt to climate change in the continent. In her speech, she indicated that Egypt will chair the negotiating session at the international level to finance the issue of climate change, based on its keenness to address this issue decisively and effectively. This came during the plenary session held in the Parliament House on Monday, tackling a request on clarifying the policy on the measures taken to confront the phenomenon of climate change. This session also highlighted the extent to which these measures conform to the international agenda, set in this regard in accordance with standards specified in the relevant international conventions and treaties.
And for our final news item on this edition of Africa Today, the Egyptian national football team coach announced the preliminary squad for the 2021 African Cup of Nations. The final 23-man squad will be announced by the end of the month. More details to follow.
A 40-man preliminary squad for the 2021 African Cup of Nations, scheduled to be held in Cameroon between 9 January and 6 February. According to a statement by the Egyptian Football Association (EFA), the final 23-man squad will be announced by the end of December. In their bid to win a record-extending 8th African Nations Cup, Egypt will play in Group D of the biennial tournament alongside Nigeria, Sudan and Minnows, Guinea-Bissau. The Pharaohs' key midfielder Tariq Hamid is the prominent absentee in the preliminary squad, as the Zamalek star remains unfavourite choice for Queiroz, who also excluded him from the recent FIFA Arab Cup. On Saturday, Egypt ended the Arab Cup at the 4th place after losing 5-4 on penalties to host Qatar following a drab goalless draw. The Portuguese coach Queiroz also dropped Smoha winger Hussein Faisal, who was one of his key elements at the Arab Cup. Meanwhile, Ghazal Mahala's defender Mohamed Fathallah got his first international call-up in Sunday's announced squad by the former Portugal and Colombia coach. Liverpool star winger Mohamed Salah, Arsenal's midfielder Mohamed El-Neni, and Aston Villa winger Mahmoud Trezeguet Hassan are the prominent names among the foreign-based players called up for the most prestigious football tournament in Africa, the African Cup. Queiroz did not call any of the foreign-based players for the Arab Cup, given the tournament falls outside of the normal international calendar. The Egypt coach said repeatedly before the Arab Cup that he would use it to try out new strategies and inject fresh blood before next month's Nations Cup and an anticipated World Cup qualifying playoff in March. Under the guidance of Queiroz, Egypt recently secured a place in the final qualifying round of the 2022 World Cup qualifiers, which will be played next March in a two-legged form against another group leader.
With this final news item, we wrap up today's edition of Africa Today. We do hope you have enjoyed it. Do join us again tomorrow, just after 2 p.m. for a new edition. Till then, my name is Angie Meher. Many thanks for watching.